Welcome to Brain Snacks, bite-sized learning moments from Live and Work More Human. To learn more, check out the full conversation at the link in our show notes or visit us at liveandworkmorehuman.com. For now, enjoy. Before we dive into the full episode, here's a quick message from our podcast partners. What if every organization could deeply understand and optimize the potential of its greatest asset, its people?
Humanico blends cutting-edge insight with powerful organisational intelligence to give leaders a single, clear map of their people and how they thrive.
Cut through the noise of disconnected tools and surveys. Humanico brings it all together into one dynamic, intuitive platform, empowering better decisions, wiser strategies, and stronger teams, so humans and organisations flourish.
Humanico, putting people first at every level. To learn more, visit humanico.co/live and work more human. That's humanico.co/live and work more human.
I think the first thing that we need to do is separate success from thriving, as they're not the same thing. Success, as we define it, has a lot to do with money, power, and status. These things that we know. If you have a big house and a nice car and you wear a nice watch and you have all the accolades and the titles and you can walk into a restaurant and get them to get you a table really quickly. Those are all the signs that you're successful. And by the way, success is great. I think we all want success in our lives, and the system that we live in is built for success. It's designed for us to achieve success. So those are very important extrinsic motivators, and I think it's okay to want them and it's okay to chase them. What I'm arguing in the book, the thesis is that success may not be enough to have a meaningful life and a whole life and to have well-being. And that's where thriving comes in. And I would say if success is money, power, and status, thriving is agency, meaning, and social connection, which are intrinsic motivators. Agency, meaning, and social connections are things that we have a lot of control over. You may not, control is a big word, but I'm going to use it just for the purposes of this conversation, because what do we actually control? But let's not get too philosophical about it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that when it comes to agency and making meaning and social connection, our locus of control, it stays within our locus of control. So these are things that we can actually practice, that we can actually learn, and we can implement in our lives. And by the way, there's research over the last 3 decades, more than ever before, that tells us, number one, how to do this. What are the ways that work for a lot of people, which, by the way, they may not be the way that works for you, but it can give us some good ideas and some good kind of stepping stones to figuring out how to get more agency, more meaning, and more social connection. And it tells us that once we get agency, meaning, and social connection, our well-being increases, which means that we have a fuller life. So that's the argument that I'm trying to make in A Guide to Thriving.
It's so important, Jon. And I think a few words that come to mind for me here as someone who did very much chase success and status and accolade in especially more junior in my career without this focus on thriving and well-being, is that I felt like I could achieve those things, but there was a sense of nothingness underneath them, almost like a sense of discontent, of ill ease. And so I think it's that marriage between things looking right on the outside and feeling well and contented and right on the inside that's so crucial. And I think for me personally, when I focus on the internal, the external starts to attract itself to me more naturally than when I just on a goal pursuit of those external things. And I wonder, has that sort of been the flip that's happened for you as well?
That's beautiful. Well, here we get into this whole notion of, does correlation imply causation, right? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we start on the inside and then the outside shifts, or the outside shifts of, I think it's unclear how the causality occurs. And we do know that this has a tremendous impact on our well-being. Social connection, for example, like Imagine there was a drug out there that would increase your survival by 50% and reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by 29%, risk of stroke, reduce it by 32%, reduce your risk of dementia, increase your well being. If there was a drug that did all of that, we would all be lining up outside the doctor's office and being like, can I please have a prescription? That's what social connection does for us. There are longitudinal studies that suggests that there's probably nothing as important in our life as humans. Well, I mean, there's food and air, and of course, but I'm talking things that we have a real impact in that can impact our well-being as social connection can.
Such a profound point, and I think in a society which is so individualized and focused on sort of splintering us, I think, through social media. And I think there's this pervasive narrative in the States, but really around the world, of this idea of we have to be self-made, we can't rely on anyone else. And I think it's so important for us to constantly be reminding ourselves how fundamental social connection is to our own well-being as individuals, but also as a community, I would argue as a species. So I'm really glad that you shared those, the statistics with us. And yes, we would all line up for that drug if that was how it was characterized. And I also love what you say about agency, and it really takes me back to my own experience when I was a corporate finance lawyer and I collapsed at an airport and was burnt out. And I remember speaking with a therapist a few weeks after that incident happened, and she said to me, now if you want to leave the firm or not. And it was the first time that I realized, and this sounds very silly to say, but it was the first time that I realized that I had a choice, because I had just been sort of living this life. It seemed very successful. I didn't feel like it was a choice. It seemed like it was just what I should do, because it was this incredible opportunity, and there was all of the status, power, and accolades associated with it. And I think that switch happens for a lot of people, where we have that moment of like suddenly realizing this is our one precious life. And we have the agency to make a choice and take our lives in a very different direction. So I think that the agency component of it is a really important one. Was that sort of something, a similar sort of realization that you had yourself?
Yes, and I love your story, Sally, because this illustrates agency in such a beautiful way. This idea of I have no choice, which a lot of us experience often. This is a common experience. If you feel this way, there are lots of people who feel the same way. Like this is a very common occurrence. Is us surrendering our agency. So let's define agency. Agency is the capacity to make intentional choices supported by the belief that those choices actually matter and have an impact in the world. That is the definition of agency that I use in the book to operationalize it and to talk about it. Of course, there'll be people who disagree with me, and I hope that we can talk about it, because I'm sure it's not a fully comprehensive definition, but this one works for this. So I would argue there's very low agency, which is this sense of helplessness that I cannot have an impact on my life. Nothing that I do will change my life. And a lot of us feel this, especially if we're really successful. We can be trapped by that success and say, well, but I like the lifestyle, and I like the paycheck, and I like the fact that I get to work and everybody knows I'm the boss, and I really enjoy all of these things, so I don't really have a choice. I can't really walk away from this job. That's what I would call really low agency. Then you can move a little bit higher on the agency spectrum the moment that you say, okay, I have a choice to stay and have all of these amazing things, or I have a choice to walk away from the job and be unemployed, right? Which is how most of us experience that glimmer of agency initially. So that would be kind of like the black and white version of agency. Really high agency is when we don't just see the black and white, but we see a rainbow of alternatives in front of us. So that could be, I can stay and I can have a smaller portfolio, or I can, I can work less hours, or, whatever that looks like if there is accommodation available. Or I can leave and I can rest, or I can start a new business, or I can, whatever that may look like. So I think agency is a uniquely human capacity, and we are surrendering it so often because we're in this state of survival mode. So what I suggest is that the way to go from survival mode to thriving is to practice agency. And agency is not this innate thing that everybody has. I see it as a skill, as something that is learned and that we can actually work on through the process of our lives.
We hope you enjoyed this brain snack from Live and Work More Human. Learn more at liveandworkmorehuman.com. We'll see you next time.